Welcome everyone. My name is Bodo Sieber, CEO of Tag Marshal. Thank you so much for joining our expert session, How Erin Hills and Others Achieve Success by Optimizing the Play Experience, Efficiency and Revenue. I'm very excited to have our expert guest and an old friend of ours, Jim Lombardo from Erin Hills Golf Course. Jim, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
As always, this is not the first expert session that Jim has done with us, but there's always a new light that we're shining on things. So I'm very excited that he's making the time again. The one thing that I'm sad about is that we don't get to have our Thursday evening beers at the Miller's Ale House opposite the convention center this year, where you and the team and many others normally come pop around. So we'll have to save that one for 2022.
We'll double up.
That's why you're the expert. Thanks, Jim. Okay, what I'd like to start with is just a quick intro, Jim, on yourself and your amazing course. This is a photo from just a regular Tuesday afternoon, right?
Yeah. Well, Erin Hills is I've been the head professional there since 2006 when the course first opened, and we're a 100% public golf course located just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're a little unique in that we have one standalone 18-hole golf course, but we offer overnight lodging. We have like 37 beds on property, cottages, suites, rooms, things of that nature. So people can actually stay overnight and play multiple rounds of golf. So we have a number of tremendous amenities, a short course. We have a 63,000 square foot putting course, fine dining, clubhouse, golf shop, all that stuff. So it's a fantastic facility. And if you haven't been there at some point, you probably should go. So.
It's certainly on.
And the other unique thing about Erin Hills is, as it relates to this discussion, is we were the first ever client for the wonderful company of Tag Marshal. So we hang that banner proudly.
Of course, I was going to mention
that. I beat you to it.
So this is not the regular Tuesday. This is, in fact, the US Open that you proudly hosted.
Right. Yeah, and the last thing I was going to tell about the golf course is we, as a lot of people know, we hosted the 2017 United States Open, won by Brooks Koepka, his first major. Obviously, he's turned out to be a pretty darn good player, so we identified him there, so that was great. We've also hosted the 2008 Women's Amateur Public Links and the 2011 United States Amateur. Coming up next year, we're hosting the 2022 United States Mid Amateur, and then in a few years down the road, 2025, the United States Women's Open. So not a bad collection of USGA events for a course that just opened in 2006.
Not bad at all. Jim, I'm hearing a bit of an echo, and I'm not sure if that's me or I wonder what I can do differently.
I'm hearing fine, so.
Okay, might just be me. The age-old question is, and I've actually had the suggestion, I read that recently, that in order for us golfing fanatic public to understand how tough a US Open course is, should we not have one regular Joe 10 handicapper in the field just to see how he would play? Because the pros obviously make it look easy. What, from your experience and how the USGA and your team have set up the course for the Open, what do you think would have been a regular player score, and what did Brooks end up shooting?
Well, he ended up 16 under par for the 4 rounds. So, and we have 4 par 5s on the golf course. So that was, part of it. But they set it up from 7,800 yards plus, but most people don't obviously play it back that far. That's extremely difficult. But the USGA, they know exactly how to set up the golf course for players of that caliber. I don't think having somebody in your group that's a lower handicap like that makes too much of a difference because they're probably going to play tees that you're not playing. They're going to play back a little bit further, but they have a good sense of, how people are going to play it. Obviously we try and push people up to the more forward tees so they can enjoy the golf course because it is quite difficult. So I guess that would be my answer.
Yeah, no. Okay, Jim, let's jump into it. Before we do, if you'll allow me just 30 seconds on Tag Marshal. As Jim mentioned, we have been around now. This would have been our seventh, or is, I suppose, our seventh PGA show. And Erin Hills was indeed our first US customer way back when. At this point, we work with over 300 facilities. We've tracked around 15 million rounds of golf. This number should probably be updated monthly because it's really growing rapidly. And there's a lot of data that comes with our work. We're very fortunate that 30 of the top 100 clubs in the US now work with us and optimize their course with our system. What we look after is the player traffic, so anything flow related, pace related, and just general optimization of anything that happens on course, as Jim will talk to just now. In the top row here, you see a nice list of private clubs. The question often is, does this system make sense for a private club? Absolutely, it does. Simply because there's so much excellence required here, right? And there's discerning members, so you want to serve them your course in the best possible way. And the Oakmonts and the Wingfoots, the Hazeltines speak for themselves. And then we've got a nice list of daily fee courses, also as major hosts, obviously. Erin Hills and their neighbors and friends, Whistling Straits up the road, and many others, but not only in the US, but also in Europe. And we are supplying data and research to the USGA, and we're a tech partner to the European Tour and a few others. So we're just looking to add value where we can. Maybe worth mentioning that the majority of our clubs that we work with are really the middle of the road, $50 round fee club that is looking to work smarter, more efficiently, or the good private clubs that's looking to really put their members first. And that's where we're finding the most traction. But obviously, very, very grateful to work with some exceptional managers. And one of those is here with us today. So what we want to start with is why is pace and flow of play so key to the player experience? And then we'll look at how do you optimize the player experience at Erin Hills? What does operational efficiency look like? And what's the impact on the bottom line? Because ultimately that's the game. You are a business. So the first question, Jim, and what I would like to do here is just ask you to maybe outline, while I'm also asking our guests what they think, what are the top 3 player experience factors out of this list, which the USGA and others have quizzed and surveyed many times. Let me just see if I can get this poll launched. It's launching. You guys can't see that, but if those in attendance would just do a quick quote. You've got 3 choices. What do you think? Jim, in the meantime, what would you rate as the top 3 and what's important to yourself and the team at Erin Hills, and also to your golfers, first and foremost?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously some of the first 2, course conditioning is very, very important. Pace and flow of play is another very important factor. And I think, for the most part, people are looking for value in their round. They're looking for the experience. Those would be my top 3. But for sure, the 2 would be course conditioning and pace and flow of play.
Thanks, Jim. I think you're right on here with what our attendees are thinking. Let me just share the results here quickly. So what floats to the top here is course conditioning, pace and flow of play, and then playing partners in the group. That is...
Yeah, that's part of it too. It's very important.
For sure. And I'm sure you get many group bookings where the players make sure that they're playing with their friends when they have the bucket list experience they've been planning to win a long time. Okay. We want to look at this from a research point of view. So obviously this poll of our attendees is a small layer of research, but we're going to look a little bit deeper just now. But as operators, we need to do what the customers are asking of us, right? We need to do what's important to them. We need to provide that rather. And here's the Golf Advisor's list of rating factors, which is, as you know, Golf Advisor is like the TripAdvisor of golf. And they are rating conditioning, value, layout, friendliness of the staff. Key pace of play is in here. That's why I wanted to show this to you, and amenities, and how does that rate? So here's two randomly chosen courses. One is 7,735 yards long, and the other one is quite a bit shorter, 6,286. Which one of those do you think is Erin Hills? Obviously the one with the close to 5-star rating, and 99.4 recommendations. And this is not by chance, it's because you and the team put a lot of effort into getting those high ranking marks every single day. But I think worth pointing out that the much shorter course here has got a really poor pace rating. And for many players, this is a reason not to go, right? But beyond that, it's something that we really need to pay attention to. And in line with what everyone on the panel is thinking, the USGA research confirms that 82%, that's the highest percentile of players, believe course conditioning is a crucial enjoyment factor. And then very close to that, and alongside who's in my group that I'm playing with, is pace and flow of play. And that's only 6% lower. So Jim, when you think, having been in the industry for such a long time, how much effort goes into course conditioning versus how much or little effort is actually needed to make a difference in the pace, it's probably quite staggering to think what a difference this can make to the players when you look at these results, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, if you're going to play a U.S. Open golf course, the course conditioning is something you've come to expect when you're coming to a facility. You're expecting it to be immaculate, and we do everything we can do to make sure on a daily basis that that's the case, because it would be a surprise to somebody if they showed up and the conditions weren't what they were expecting, and that would be a poor surprise. So, you know, we put that as probably our top priority, is making sure the golf course is in phenomenal condition every day, and we don't spare a dollar to do that. As far as making a difference on the golf course, you know, well, obviously, you know, back in the day, we really didn't know what, you know, our pace of play was, but we kind of had an idea, but we wanted to make a dent in that and try and increase that part of the satisfaction for golf. And we found you and implemented the system, and for the affordability that it had, it really showed us how to attack the golf course and where all of our stats and data were, and then implement a ranger plan, implement a plan for how we're going to ranger the golf course. And in no time at all, we made a huge dent in the overall satisfaction of play of golf on the course in terms of pace of play and flow.
I think the two important points here. One is that you never were considered as having a pace of play problem, right?
No, we never did, but we just wanted to get a grasp on it. And we know this whole industry now is data collection, and we wanted to see what our pace of play was, where some of the bottlenecks might be, track golfers, track rounds, track caddies, see how they're doing, to improve our our facility and our operations. And it certainly helped tremendously in all of those.
Jim, I think the other point you're raising is the high level of expectations. You mentioned conditioning, but it obviously goes way beyond that, right? The expectations are quite high, sky high. And we're going to talk to that just now as to how do you make sure that you match those. But just if you'll allow me, one more little piece of research that has come out of the 5th Golf Innovation Symposium, which was held in Tokyo in 2019, which was a year when we could still travel. And here on stage is a dear colleague of yours, Jim, that's Professor Christina Schoenhofer from the University of Wisconsin Start,
Mhm.
and she also has an important operational role at Erin Hills. So she understands and lives the golf space daily, but is also a researcher. And what they wanted to find out is what are the key player experience factors that really matter to golfers, because in line with what Jim is saying, we need to track, we need to find ways to measure ourselves so we can keep improving. And that's exactly the challenge the USGA is posing to the industry. And what they found is that 1,000 touch points within a golfer experience. And the surprising part is that they wanted to rate those across what are the highest dissatisfiers in terms of what makes golfers unhappy, and what are the ones that makes golfers the most satisfied. So we can rank it in terms of their importance. And they found that the most important or the highest ranking positive factor is positive ranger etiquette. And then up there as well as green and open tees, people don't want to have to wait, and conditioning is obviously very high. And then on the other end of the scale, really rock bottom, the worst thing that you can do to a golfer is other speed in terms of their experience. They're not happy if that is not done right. And then corrective pace of play actions, meaning somebody's coming over and says, hey guys, you're slow, pick it up. So that is a huge conundrum, because while this is really emotional for players, they're asking us to manage it, but they don't want us to manage it badly, right?
Yeah, those bottom two are perfect frustrators. That's what they've been deemed as.
100%. So in terms of how you're designing a satisfaction guaranteed experience at Erin Hills, I think what I'm going to do is just jump ahead to that because it's such a nice segue. How do you optimize the player experience? How you, knowing all of these things, and obviously also having such a specialist like Christina Skunova on your team, how do you manage this space, and how do you make sure that you are succeeding and delivering excellence every single time?
Well, what we do is, and we've done this every year, is we map out the Erin Hills experience from the time you pick up the phone to call to the time you leave the property on your way out the exit road. And we do it in great detail and try and map it out perfectly. We'll try and identify items where things might go wrong, and we link them all to each department, and we try to have a flow with everything from, you know, the engagement, the arrival, the golf, the exit, and the extension beyond. So we've mapped this all out, and we try to avoid, like we said, any surprises. Like, course condition wasn't as good as what I thought it was going to be. I was surprised, or I showed up for my room and I thought I was having a king size bed and I have a queen size bed. That's a surprise, and these things are all lead to negative experiences. So we try to avoid the surprises. We try to trace the experience, and then each manager for the department will, you know, attack their responsibilities. And you know, that's what I do with golf, is try to manage that space and avoid the perfect frustrators, and try and get people teed off on time, get them around on time, no waiting, and smiles when they're finished. So that's kind of that's what I've tried to do. So.
And you're doing it very nicely. I think important to acknowledge that it's by design, right? Everything is designed for you to achieve that. And I think this illustration here shows that engage means, well, I'm thinking about playing at Erin Hills, I'm booking my round, having a conversation with one of your team to book me, and then I'll arrive, like you said, driving through the gates. Am I feeling welcome? Do I know where to go? But in this illustration, golf is really highlighted as of major importance, because that is what drives the bus for you, right? And also that's where people spend most of their time actively. That's the Erin Hills experience. Would you agree that how they feel on the course, and as far as their course experience goes, that's how they will feel afterwards?
Sure. I mean, you can not be perfect in terms of engagement or arrival, or even extension or extend, or exit and extension, but most of the time they're spending their time on the golf course, and you can be great in all those other aspects, but if they're on the golf course and it's backed up and it's slow and they're waiting a lot and they're frustrated and they can't find a place to get a refreshment or anything like that, that's going to be very, very frustrating and probably lead to not a lot of customer retention. I mean, our goal at Erin Hills is to try and make sure that as many people we can get to come back and return is our goal, because we're a destination. Most people come once a year, sometimes twice. So customer retention for us is huge. So this plays a huge part in what we do on the golf course, and Tag Marshal helps us achieve this.
So we're talking about on-course presentation and making sure that all that amazing effort that you and your team put in, getting people to come, then gets executed also on the course. One of the things that we mentioned was tracking data and looking at how are we doing well in this, right? And I just want to point out one thing, because I know that's one of the data sets that you guys look at daily. So the traditional way of checking how we're doing with this whole pace of play thing is to look at the average round time, right? So a club might have a ranger who checks start time, end time, or maybe some a bit of maybe that's part of the tee sheet even. They check start time, they check end time, and now we're looking at average round times. And here, this is a real example where the average round times of this course that wants to play to 4 hours comes in at 4:06. So you would think, hey, that looks good, right? You're nearly where you want to be. But if you look a little bit deeper at the data, it actually shows that only 27% of these rounds are on pace or faster, and 73% are not. So if you then break this down further, you can see who's on pace and faster within 10 minutes, 20, 30, and obviously up here, that's your accident zone, right? This is when people are having to wait. This is when people are not mindful. And this is a whole month worth of data. You can already see that there were a few days that really went bad here. And it doesn't mean that these are all slow players. No, it just means that there are a few groups out there that are impacting many other groups. And that's exactly what then impacts the experience negatively. And this is, in the traditional metric, this looks fine, but the reality is that half the players on this course, where the traditional metric of average round time looks fine, are actually underserved. So Jim, this is something that you look at on a regular basis, and I would guess that you also benchmark yourselves as to what you're trying to achieve and what you're working towards.
Sure. I mean, the average round time, yeah, I look at that, and that to me means that most players are actually playing above your goal time, which is not what you want. But the key is the graph on the lower right, and I look at this every day, and I record the stats for this every day of the year. And like, for instance, on July 11th of this year, the course was pretty well full. We were 80% capacity, which is fairly full for us, and we had 52% of the rounds were on pace or better. Okay, that's okay. It's at least it's above 50, but 84% of the rounds were within 10 minutes of our goal time, and only 16% of the rounds were 10 minutes or higher from the goal time. So, we look at that and we say, well, if our pace of play is 4 hours and, a lot of groups are coming in at 4:03 or 4:04, it's at least tolerable. I don't think anybody's going to bark about something like that. They will bark if they're coming in at 4 hours and 30 minutes. So we identify, or try to identify on the course using the Tag Marshal, who are the 16% of the groups that are 10 minutes or worse, and how are we managing those folks? Because those are the folks that are going to affect your average round time more than most of the players that are playing on pace. Those are the ones that are going to drag it down. So that's how we identify who we need to work with. And that lower chart for us is huge, especially in terms of training and managing down the road.
Yeah, I think let's look at how the system works for you at Erin Hills and how you come to have data available like this. So here's a bit of a schematic of, on the far left is the hardware units that we supply for walking golfers. So one in a group gets tracked with us. At Erin Hills, we've got the classic tags, some walking facilities using these two-way mobile units. that get carried by the caddy, or they get clipped onto a push trolley, or get clipped onto a golf bag. And then the cart facilities, which is obviously most of our facilities, either use a passive tracker that gets hidden in the cart and tracks the cart movement at all times, or they use what is more like a traditional GPS screen. And what these units all do is provide a movement data and geolocation data to our server, and the server then makes sense of the traffic problem that is the golf course. And our system really understands how do the groups interact, what's the gap time between the groups, what is the trend, and so on, and then creates easy to use information for the player assistants and for management, both to live manage, which we're going to look at just now, but also to manage performance over time. Because much like, if you think about it, it's like a restaurant where you're trying to drive optimal capacity, right? Because otherwise you're not going to be profitable. It's like an airline where you're trying to drive minimum downtime. Airline, obviously not a good example with COVID, they're all hurting, but minimum downtime and quick turnarounds. And you have to track data and make sure that you understand the processes that optimize the space so that you can get the most out of your fixed costs and get the best possible opportunity to drive profit. So it's really a traffic problem. But in our case, there's also a huge experience factor that we're doing everyone a favor if we're managing it well. But ultimately, there's a business culture, which we're going to get to later. So, Jim, many people have called this the Waze or the Google Maps of golf course management, because I suppose that's what it does versus a traditional paper map or just driving line of sight. This is what Erin Hills looks like through the eyes of the system. Why don't you just explain a little bit what you can see here just by this example?
Well, imagine the ability to walk into your office and pull up a screen and see exactly what's happening on the golf course in the blink of an eye, which is fantastic. But as I look at this screen, the first thing that jumps out to me is what's going on with tag 11, that group. Well, okay, I click on it and I see that they're 8 minutes already ahead of or behind of where they're supposed to be, which is easily going to lead to, at least if you look at the pace trend, they have had a decent first hole, but then every hole since then they've been behind. They've struggled. So now to me that means, oh my gosh, this group is not only are they 8 minutes behind after 6 holes, they're probably going to be 20 minutes or 25 minutes behind after 18 holes. We better intervene. Oh, where's my marshal right there? Oh, there's the marshal card. He's attacking the area that needs to be looked at. He's speaking with the group or intervening or speaking with the caddies or has taken action. And that's where I can see where the staff is doing what they're supposed to be doing, is taking action and looking at tag 11. And if you look at all the other green tags that are out there, we don't need to talk to those folks. We can stay away from them and let them enjoy their round. We need to talk to tag 11 because it could affect tag 12, 13, 15 behind them. And what we'll do is after we've made an intervention and suggested a way to try and get back into position, we'll go backwards and talk to 12, 13 and let them know that we're taking action and trying to do something to help this group along. So.
Thanks, Jim. I think the importance here and of what you explained is that you know immediately which is the biggest issue, right? That's the head of the snake right now, and right. So does the team out on the course because they're armed with a tablet and they see the exact same thing. Everybody's got the same line of sight.
They can go right. They don't have to drive around the golf course all day long and try and record times and try and figure out where there might be issues. They can look at a tablet and see immediately where they need to go to all the hot spots, to groups that are not only are they behind our goal times, they're also holding people up. So those are the ones, the magenta colored ones that need to be addressed, and we address them early in the front nine. We don't let them get to the back nine because then it's too late. So we take corrective action as early and as often as we can early in the round to look out for the benefit of the entire field.
And the results show, we're going to look at that just now. Also, how you do it corrective action, because we know that golfers are very sensitive. We got a slide to talk to that in just a minute. So yeah, the corrective action question. So the traditional marshalling is exactly that. It's marshalling, right? It's rangering. It's almost like a military term. And we're picturing this, I don't know what cartoon this guy's from, maybe a Tom and Jerry or something. And he's just as grumpy, serious person who comes over and tells you you've done something wrong. But I think it's very different at Erin Hills, because you're looking at your marshals much more as player assistants, right? And one of the things that the players are telling us is that don't come over and tell me I'm slow, because I'm probably not going to like that. So what is your script, and what are the sort of things that your team say, and how do you set the scene around that you're on top of managing the pace so that everyone can have a good time, and how does this add to the experience rather than detract from it?
Well, yeah, we certainly have scripts for how we do it. We have caddies in the group, which certainly can assist with pace of play. Initially, what we'll do is, we'll make sure we're visible. We'll make sure that, at the tee, the starter will let people know that there are marshals on the golf course that are there to assist in case groups fall out of position. And we never use the word slow or you're behind. It's always you're out of position. We'll teach our staff to, if they're going to make an intervention prior to that, actually, we do hand signals with caddies. If a marshal notices a group that's a little out of position, 1 or even 2 or 3 minutes in the first 3 or 4 holes, can make a hand signal to the caddies to let them know that information. They're a couple minutes behind. The caddy will respond and try and work them back into position. And if they can't, that's when the caddies will signal for an SOS, which means our staff will come over and make an intervention. And it's always friendly. It's always been with a smile. They're armed with the tablet so that the people know that they're being tracked, and because they were told on the tee. And we just say, we're a little out of position at this point. Is there anything I can do to help you out at this point? And maybe they'll come up with a suggestion that could help them, or we can observe them. And if they're looking for balls too long in the rough or something along those lines, we can give them a suggestion that, it's a very difficult golf course to keep yourself in position. I would suggest maybe not spending 6 or 7 minutes looking for a golf ball. The recommendation is, for 3 minutes. So according to the USGA, so they're always positive, and they're never negative, and they're never too many. You don't want to follow people and feel like you're stalking them. So
yeah, I think
folks,
those are very important points, and those, just to recap quickly, I think by doing this, you're doing exactly what golfers are asking. It's positive ranger etiquette. So you're not coming over and say, hey guys, you're slow, get on with it. You're ensuring by proactive management that the tees are open. There's no wait times generally. And the ranger and marshal role in general, that is not that well liked. Well, you're circumventing that by saying, well, here's a player assistant. I'm here to help you. And then the corrective action is friendly and it's helpful. And I think, Key, you mentioned that it's based on facts rather than opinion. And it's very easy to show a player, if there's a question on the map, look, this is where you're at, this is where you're supposed to be. And unfortunately, there's some groups behind you that are now impacted. Let's work together and get back in position. So
precisely.
That is a positive way of tackling these, what Jim, you rightly said, they're dissatisfiers down here. And all of a sudden, others people's speed, well, it's big and taken care of, and I can play my round and I'm not being impacted by somebody else. So alongside this, there's obviously a lot of operational efficiency that you are aiming to get out of better management, right? So how are you achieving operational efficiency? Like you mentioned some data earlier that you looked at, and maybe just an example here, Jim, this is a single day at Erin Hills, and you can see that you came through here flying colors with yeah, on pace and with intent. And like you said, nobody's going to have any issues if there's no holdups, and it takes 5-6 minutes longer to play. If they weren't held up, this is a perfect round. It's really nicely balanced. How do you make sure that that you stay on top of things? What do these numbers mean, for instance? And what does this tell you in terms of your team's performance and the course performance for that day?
Yeah. First of all, I'll start with starter efficiency. I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, you have tee intervals for a reason, because they're deemed to be the intervals that you need to keep people spaced out properly on the golf course. So we try to start our groups exactly on our intervals. If a group is 2 or 3 minutes late, well, then everybody is going to be 2 or 3 minutes late the rest of the day, because we're going to keep our intervals. And normally what we have is a 12-minute interval. We have a tough par 5 as an opening hole, so it has to be that. But and plus, we want to keep people spaced out a little bit more. We don't want to jam them out there, but we try and stay on that as much as we can, because if you alter from that, fall a little bit behind, and then try and catch up, you're going to have a bottleneck on the golf course. So we try and stick with that. If you look at that bar chart, that's a huge way to look at how the day went. And those numbers there are marshal interventions and the number of interventions that were taken with that group. If a group has fallen out of position, and you can see early on, even in the early morning, we had some groups that were potentially out of position, but you see their overall color at the end of the day was green, meaning they probably were out of position and going to be red or magenta, but we intervened. Marshall can type in on the tablet what the intervention was. They told them, hey, they need to get back in a position, or we helped them look for balls, or we caddied or something like that. They can put that information in there. And I know that my staff then is working on groups and turning them from groups that were potentially going to be out of position to groups that fell into position. So you can see that your staff is working and they're doing what you want them to do, if you notice the number of marshal notes that they have there. And that's a huge, so this chart is fantastic to look at.
Jim, 2 questions for you. Just from an efficiencies point of view, you mentioned earlier that you feel that your team is much more efficient in terms of knowing exactly where to go. Has it helped you trim back hours, or were you able to deploy staff elsewhere that you maybe didn't need now to go and ranger the whole day and troll the course backwards? How has it helped you as far as your
money? Sure, concerned? You can save money on labor with less ranger staff. In the past, you know, and I know a lot of courses that used to do this. Well, the first group of the day is the lead group, so they're going to be very important. So they're teeing off at 7 o'clock. Let's get that marshal out at 7 o'clock to watch them right off the bat. Well, you know, we've been able to back those off, because we can look at it on the screen and see how well our first few groups of the day are doing. And typically our first few groups of the day play a little bit quicker. And I can bring that up example a little bit later, but you can, you know, all of a sudden I don't need to bring the marshal until 9 o'clock, because you know, we can observe this from the golf shop or from my office. And if there's a need for an intervention, I can take care of it myself real quick, without having somebody out there monitoring the first group of the day. And especially at the end of the day too, we know that we can get everybody around in time based on the stats that we have. So we don't need to have somebody out there pushing the last few groups to finish before dark. And we need less people on the golf course, because they can go to where the hot spots are. Sometimes you only need maybe 1 or 2 people on a full golf course, where in the past you might have had 3 or 4 people out there. So yeah, you can save money on labor.
I think we saw it a lot, obviously in the years gone by, but especially also in COVID, in that crazy season last year, because a lot of clubs had to let go of staff, and then they came back and there was huge demand for play. And then they realized, well, we have to do things with less touch points. We don't have our full team, and that's where technology is really helpful. Just showing that it's possible to actually manage things from the pro shop as needed, rather than all the time. And yeah, maybe worth noting that we know that, Jim, you're busy, your team's busy. So we have set up an alerts portal that pings you on your cell phone when a group is starting to fall out of a certain threshold in terms of pace. And obviously that also works for geofencing and so on. So the system alerts you to take a look at it when it's needed, not necessarily all the time. But I know that, Jim, from your point of view, you look at the system a lot. How many people would you say within your staff contingent are engaging with the system on a daily basis?
Nearly at least 75%. The maintenance staff looks at it in case they need to go on the golf course. They can see where people are at without having to drive around and try and find little gaps if they need to do some, syringing of the greens or something like that. Bag drop looks at it, so they know when people are going to be finishing or coming in, and who's going to be finishing and coming in, because you can see the tee time and the names of the caddies in that group and what the tee time was. The entire golf shop will look at it, myself or the ranger staff. Food and beverage looks at it. They need to know where people are that they need to address on the golf course, so they can look at the map without driving around. So I mean, almost everybody looks at it. So
yeah, I think that, sorry for jumping around, but I think that food and beverage is an important point, because again, it's all about efficiencies, right? You've got a halfway house booked in here, where you can now see, well, is that realistic? And it seems like it's on this day, you were about a minute over. Well, it doesn't make much of a difference, but if you've got 5 or 6 holes at 2 or 3 minutes over and the halfway house is 5 minutes out, all of a sudden, your day doesn't go as planned and there's a surprises that you're trying to avoid. So we get a lot of courses that are looking at this hole stats hole by hole in terms of their, can they maybe create a more supportive or conducive setup to optimize flow. And it has also informed a lot of renovations, because over and above this and this live map that you see down here, we can also show you a heat map of where are people going, where don't they go. There's not too much impact, obviously, at Erin Hills being a walking facility, but you can imagine if you've got kart golf only, you need to know where those wear and tear areas. And often you can see that before it gets bad. And also we've had a lot of clubs that have had single riding, which means twice the amount of traffic. And they're like, now looking at where are those hotspots, how can we manage our flow, our traffic flow, our kart paths to protect our turf and make it through the season, even though we've got much more traffic. So those are all things, and once you have data, you can really be informed around this. And there's opportunities there to save, obviously, and to push for more revenue, because ultimately it wouldn't be smart operators if we didn't look at that. So Jim, the last set of questions for you at Erin Hills. How has it helped you to optimize yields? And you spoke a bit about savings and labor savings, but there is opportunity to find revenue, especially around capacity. How has that worked for you?
Well, here's how it helped us, and it can help anybody this way. If you have the data, you can make proper decisions to maximize your golf course. And the data, after collecting enough of it, we're an 18-hole golf course that doesn't have twilight rounds, so we're a little unique in that way that, we want everybody. The last tee time of the day is a guaranteed 18-hole finish round, and we didn't really know what that was prior to Tag Marshal, but now that we know exactly how groups are playing at the end of the day, based on the data, we figured out we could add 1 tee time at the end of the day safely and let that group finish. So we added 1 right there. Imagine adding 1 tee time to your tee sheet every day, public or private. Then after more study, we realized that pace of play was much faster in the morning than it was in the afternoon, almost 20 minutes faster per group on average. So what we did was, prior to lunchtime, we added 2 tee times in the morning. We changed our intervals from 12 to 11 in the morning, and then sagged back to 12 in the afternoon and created 2 extra tee times. So now we've added 3 tee times per day, and we're maximizing the capacity on the golf course. That's more drinks, that's more shirts, that's more hats. For other places, it's going to be more cart fees. It's going to be, a lot of other, revenue that you're going to see from maximizing and adding capacity. And for us, that, pays for the system 1,000 times over. So we didn't know before. So I think everyone needs to look at their intervals for their golf course. And if you're not using dynamic intervals, I think you might be falling behind a little bit. So it's something worth looking at for all of your golf courses is how are your tee intervals and what times of the day can you change them?
You're very right. That is something that our team obviously work with the clubs to show them and give them strategies to help with understanding the data and looking at other opportunities for dynamic goal time so that you can manage your course to a faster goal time in the morning, which pulls your entire day long. And if players are moving faster, obviously it's the laws of physics. You can then reduce the gap time between the groups and you can create more inventory. And that is hugely successful. But I think the key is that whilst doing all of this, you're still providing a better experience for everyone else, right? Because they're all asking to manage the traffic well. Please don't let me get held up. And also, please don't send anyone over to shout at me if I'm maybe unaware or I'm not mindful that I've lost the ball. I want to make this work, obviously, for everyone. So you can do all of it. And I think you made a good point here is that, sure, it doesn't sound a lot to have 3 more tee times, but if you do the maths over a season and also given your fixed cost is essentially the same, but now you have additional capacity. So there's highly profitable rounds. And for, especially for a place like yours, that also often means additional night stay, additional meals, so it's resort spend that you're finding that you never had before. So I think, certainly that is ultimately the game. So improve the experience, work efficiently, and create revenue and savings opportunities. And that's where we're looking to add value. Jim, thank you so much for your time. If anyone has any questions, you can shoot them our way now. I'm sure that Jim will be very happy to answer. I just want to make sure that we're staying on pace. And we are now 4 minutes over, but I'm sure that the flow was good enough so people don't mind. Like you said earlier, Jim, are there any questions? Natalie is our marketing manager. Let us know if there are any, and we'll try and answer them. Okay, here's one question. Does this make sense for private clubs that are not as busy? Well, Jim, you know quite a few private club managers that use the system. What would you say to that?
I would say yes. It's always important to know where your people are and what they're doing in case you do get busy. I would think that I can't think of a facility that wouldn't benefit from the use of the system. You're tracking stats, you're tracking data. It helps you make decisions down the road. Might help you sell more memberships if you know more data. I mean, what the system does is it helps you find hidden things that you've never thought of before. Example being for us, weather evacuations on a walking golf course with 4 golfers and 2 caddies in every group and 100 golfers on the golf course. Here comes a storm. Well, and evacuating the golf course isn't all that easy that way, but we discovered that we were able to evacuate the entire golf course because we could see where all the people were and we go pick them all up. And we never thought of that prior to getting the system. So I would look at it if I was that course, even if it wasn't all that busy. It's worth looking into. You never know where the hidden value is that you're going to find from tracking data.
Okay, here's a question by Philip. Do some players feel uncomfortable being tracked? How do you navigate that or communicate that?
We haven't had an issue with it. I mean, initially, maybe some of the caddies might have been a little spooked in the fact that they're carrying a device that's tracking. But I think in the world of technology these days, I think, maybe 15 years ago, people might have been a little scared about it, but I think it's more commonplace now where I don't think it's that much of an issue. And actually, once they hit that first ball off the tee, that's kind of forgotten.
I think it's key to communicate that you're tracking so that they can have the
The
best
benefit of everybody. That's why we say it. It's not a negative thing. And we always say it on the tee. Listen, we're tracking rounds, so we want to keep the flow and pace going and make sure every group is staying on pace. And it's important for the group in front of you, if they're the ones that are falling behind or out of position, we can work with them for your benefit. So you have to take that approach to it.
Easy answer. Thanks, Jim. There's one more here. How easy was the system to implement, and did your team pull along? That's a long time ago now, but do you remember that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, you did a lot of it on your end. For us, it was remarkably easy. All we needed to do was get our units, plug them in, test them out, make sure they're going, and start sending them out and start recording the data. It was seamless, and the team at Tag Marshal is so great to work with. It was a lot easier than I thought.
Yeah, I think maybe worth noting that any cart facility has half the job done for them, because the units are installed, they don't need to be charged or handled in any way.
Right.
So that makes things even easier. Maybe one last question before we jump back at the PGA show sections. Okay, here's a question. With COVID, our walking golf has really picked up and our members seem to want more of it. Can the system track cart and walking golfers together?
Yeah, you can track every group on the golf course.
Yeah, so in this case, what we would then suggest is, let's track your carts so that they're tracked at all times. And obviously that helps with cart parts and geofencing and so on. And then we'll give you some units for your walkers, one in a group of
four. Hang a tag on a bag, hang a tag on a bag like you had in that one picture earlier, or have somebody put it in their bag and just develop a system for, collecting those at the end of the day. But yeah, you can track every group that tees off, carts or walking easily.
And Jim, you wouldn't have seen that, but our system then shows this is a cart and this is a walker, so that your team knows exactly who's who and where they are. Maybe also worth mentioning that you mentioned this earlier briefly, that we've got integrations with all the major tee sheets. So there is no duplication of efforts. So you've got Chronogolf or EasyLinks or 4Ts or Club Essentials or 4Up. Any one of those, whatever's in your tee sheet will translate directly, automatically into Tag Marshal. So that that is where Jim is saying that who are the players that are coming. Is it a twosome? Is it a foursome? Who's out there causing a bottleneck potentially, or who's going too fast? You would know the names, and especially also in the private club setting, that is very important, because you would know, without even being out there, how many guests are in that group, who's the member, and obviously over time you're also collecting profiling data on each player, because you would know this person has played here 35 times in the last 2 years, and then generally this sort of pace. So then you can allocate appropriate tee times for them. And if somebody's potentially a risk to your field, well, they might have to play later in the day where they can do less damage, or they need to come for some lessons.
Well, it would be fascinating to see a golf course that had like half walkers and half carts, and see what the pace of play was for the walkers as opposed to what the carts were, and how that affected your flow and pace on the golf course on a single day. You'd have that data right in front of you. That'd be fascinating to look at.
For sure, and that is obviously a big question that's often being asked. And if I'm not mistaken, that was part of the research that Chris Schoonover did with Eric Bray, and they actually found that walking golf tends to be quicker, simply because the players can get to where they need to get to. And certainly if you've got cart paths only, that tends to potentially slow things down. It all depends on the course as well. But that is where your course is unique, and you need to understand it, and you need as much data and information as you can, like Jim said, so you can make the right decisions and benchmark yourself every day. Okay, I think those were some great questions. Thanks everyone for asking, and thanks Jim for your time again.
Gotcha.
We'll, as you said, we'll double up on the Miller's Ale House beers.
There you go.
next year with you and the team. As always,
I'm
thank
all
you.
for it.
And must have a fantastic season. I hope more travel allowed again with vaccinations and so on. And we can't wait to check back in when the season starts.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.